with, quotes, open seas protection. Next slide, please. Another military reason may be the desire to construct in the South China Sea what submariners call a bastion, an area of relatively deep water in which ballistic missile submarines can hide. The Soviet Union turned the Sea of Okhotsk in northeast of Japan into such a bastion during the Cold War. China's development of a large submarine base at Yulin on the southern tip of Hainan Island, combined with the recent constructions in the Spratly, suggests Beijing may have borrowed this idea. Next slide, please. On a regional level, China's island building is presumably intended to deter Southeast Asian claimants from exploiting the resources around the Spratlys. Shorter supply lines and reliable bases will enable more Coast Guard and naval vessels and aircraft to be on station. The extra radar and local deployment of patrol aircraft will facilitate greater maritime domain awareness. Next slide. Access to fisheries is important. As incomes rose in China between 1970 and 2010, the proportion of fish in the national diet quintupled to 25 kilos a year. As it gets richer, this number will presumably rise. Overfishing has forced crews to look further out to sea. In 1988, 90% of the Chinese fishing industry worked inshore, just close to the coast. By 2006, 60% of the catch in Guangzhou province was offshore. Trawlers received tens of thousands of dollars in grants to expand their capacity to fish further away from home. And hundreds, possibly even thousands of fishing boats from Hainan province received between $300 and $500 a day to go fishing in disputed waters. The next slide, please. And then there's oil and gas. Vietnam claims the Vanguard Bank and leased the hydrocarbon rights to Talisman, formerly of Canada, now part of Repsol. But in July 2014, the Chinese rights to the same part of the sea were sold to Bright Oil, a Hong Kong-based company with strong connections to the Chinese political establishment. It's possible that this could be a prelude to renewed efforts by China to drill there once the supporting military and Coast Guard infrastructure is in place in the Spratlys. Next slide, please. Malaysia already has active oil production operations around the Luconia Shoals within its claimed exclusive economic zone off the coast of Borneo. However, in June this year, the Malaysian government revealed that a Chinese Coast Guard vessel had been anchored near the shoals for 2 years. China has also thought to regard the James Shoal area even closer to the Malaysian coast as also oil-rich. Next one. A tragic-comic translation error in the 1930s resulted in Chinese schoolchildren being taught to this day that the James Shoal is the country's southernmost territory. In fact, there is no territory at the shoal, it's an underwater feature. Next slide. Currently, about a third of the electricity used on the main Philippine island of Luzon is generated by gas from the Malampaya field off Palawan. Philippine media reports suggest that Malampaya will run out within 10 years. However, there appears to be plenty of gas under the Reed Bank, which, although inside the Philippines, its claimed exclusive economic zone, is also well within the U-shaped line claimed by China. In March 2015, Four Energy, London-listed but Philippine-controlled, revealed had been denied permission by the Philippine government to drill on Reed Bank because of objections from China, and the company was forced to delist its shares from the London Stock Exchange. We can be reasonably sure that China will attempt to obstruct any attempt by the Philippines to drill in this area. Mischief Reef with its new runway is just 60 nautical miles away. It's easy to term these resource grabs as offensive moves, but from a Chinese perspective, I would argue that it's the Southeast Asian countries that are trespassing on Chinese historic territory. This is a Chinese argument, not mine. Asserting sea control in the Spratlys is, I would argue, in Beijing's view, all about defending national sovereignty and protecting maritime rights. Next slide, please. Now, I would argue that this view of history is nonsense. No government administered the islands until the 20th century. Chinese interest began in 1909, when in response to a Japanese merchant extracting guano from Pratas Island, the governor of Guangzhou province launched an expedition to the Paracels. China expressed no interest in the Spratlys until 1935, and no Chinese official ever visited the Spratlys before the 12th of December 1946. Next slide, please. Nonetheless, in the first half of the 20th century, an emerging nationalist consciousness resulting from the sense of national humiliation inflicted by foreign powers created a strong belief in the South China Sea was historically Chinese. Can we move on to the next one? National humiliation, please. Its origins lie, this sense that the South China Sea is Chinese, its origins lie in an intellectual car crash, combining misunderstandings about history, namely that the Southeast Asian territories that once sent tribute to the Chinese emperor considered themselves to be part of a Chinese domain, with the introduction of Westphalian-type borders into Asia. It's noticeable that whereas China has settled all its land borders with almost all its neighbours, India being the exception, it's in dispute on all three of its maritime frontiers. I can go into more than that if you want. Next slide, please. It's vital to grasp the significance of this sense of historical entitlement because it underpins everything that China is doing. I say there's a symbiotic relationship between nationalist voices using resource arguments to justify their historic claim, and state aid is using nationalist arguments to justify the resource growth. Next slide.
I think we lost you.